Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker podcast. This is your audio version of the midweek roundup of all things Maker and Embedded and Lovely that goes up on YouTube each week as the Electromaker Show. As always, if you are someone who is a new listener to this show, this is a visual medium presented as audio. Not that that's ever been a problem. Since the beginning of this show, I've made a point of trying to make everything as well described as possible, and where there is something that is purely visual, I'll drop in and give extra context for the audio listeners. As a father of two and a runner, as a full-time freelancer as well, I feel your pain. I don't watch very much. I do listen to a lot these days. This show is a bit of a throwback in some ways, in that we're going to be looking at another fantastic bare metal YouTube series and another very simple, very cheap, not so much hack, but just idea that makes things a lot better, which is almost the exact thing I remember saying in an introduction for the show about a year ago, but at that point it was Mitchell Davis doing his Arduino bare metal series. Yes. Other than that, we have lots of nice new hardware to look at, some things that are going to be on funding websites, some things you can pre-order now in the case of the Orange Pi 3B, and we'll be looking at the winners of the Electromaker of the Month for July. That is our rolling competition that celebrates the innovation of the people who put projects on our Electromaker project section. And not only that, we'll be taking another look at the Nordic Thingy 53 as Robin Mitchell, our in-house gadget guru, is covering it as the product of the week. So with all that said, I will leave it at that. If you do want to support this podcast, you can head to electromaker.io/shop. Our shop is our primary source of income. We don't put adverts on this podcast, and we don't have any separate kind of crowdfunding website things. Speaking of crowdfunding, just very quickly at the start of this podcast, I will mention that this weekend is the 100-mile ultramarathon that I mentioned in last week's show. The fundraising page is still active. I will leave a link to it in the show notes if you would like to contribute some money to that. With all of that said, thank you all so much for continuing to listen to the podcast, and let's actually start it, shall we? We are going to begin this week's show by talking about the Electromaker of the Month winners for July 2023. But we're not going to talk about them for quite as long as we normally do. And that comes down to a very simple reason. It appears that the judges that judge our Electromaker of the Month contest have a very similar taste to me, because two of the projects that won are projects that I featured quite heavily on last week's Electromaker Show. Now, I am still going to talk about all of these things because they are Electromaker of the Month winners. But since Electromaker of the Month works with a panel of independent judges, it does mean that these things will happen occasionally. I was originally going to be the person that picked the winners of Electromaker of the Month and asked to not be, so I could just talk about projects with impunity and not have to worry about people thinking I was playing favourites. However, that does mean that occasionally this kind of stuff can happen. And this isn't the first time that I've featured something on the show that's then gone on to win. Electromaker of the Month itself is a rolling competition. Every month since July 2022, we've passed every project that's happened that month. This is our project portal. You can upload projects there for free, by the way. You need a free Electromaker account. You can just click join us here. It takes a couple of minutes to make your account, and then you can upload your projects or import them from other websites that you may have put your project on already. Each month, all of the projects are sent to a panel of independent judges who pick 3 to win. The winner wins $150 in cash and a big pile of Electromaker swag, including things like stickers and a PCB ruler and lots of other things like that. And second prize wins $100 in cash, and third prize wins $50. And having just scrolled through them, you'll see that they've been somewhat spoiled, but you'll also notice that these are things that I talked about in last week's show. That said, if you don't want to go back and watch that, I'll give a very brief rundown now. This is a DIY rotating display using an Arduino Nano and an ESP1. The ESP1 is just for Wi-Fi communication. All of the everything else is being done on the Arduino Nano. And then there's a bunch of different hardware on here to run these LEDs with a very specific timing. A Hall effect sensor in order to see how fast the thing is rotating. And underneath, as you'll see, this thing is shaped like a CD. It is run from a scavenged CD drive motor, and you can change the speed of it using this rotary encoder just underneath. Now, there's again, as I did when I talked about it last week, I haven't even mentioned the fact that this top PCB is powered completely wirelessly. It is sending power wirelessly up to the PCB, and when we actually get into it running, you can see that it does look rather good. There is a certain amount of flickering. However, that certain amount of flickering is just coming from the fact that I believe this is being filmed from a phone camera. If you're seeing this with your eyes, it looks a lot smoother. And yes, this is the winner of the Electromaker of the Month. Perhaps unsurprisingly, there's a huge amount of depth that's gone into this project. That's not to say that projects can't win or rank very highly without having complexity, and we'll actually get onto that in just a moment. But yeah, our judges were absolutely, well, it says here, our judges loved the project's intricate planning and decision to use simple and easily available parts. Also very impressed with the documentation that covers not only how the build came together, but the challenges involved and how they were overcome. The video goes through a lot of this, by the way. There's a huge deep dive into it, including the disassembly of it and going through each part and how it works, and you know, all the electronics and the various problems that they had to overcome, including things like, as I said, the timing of the LEDs and how they used a Hall effect sensor in order to get the timing correct. And all of this is also shown in the actual write-up, which you can find here as well. As always, I will link this winners document under the video because each title links out to the projects themselves, and of course the videos from the projects you can see here as well. So congratulations LHM0, for that is your username here on the Electromaker website, also known as Maker Electronics Projects on YouTube. You are the winner of the Electromaker of the Month this month. You win $150 in cash and a pile of Electromaker swag that will be winging its way out to you very soon. Now, as I mentioned, high complexity isn't necessarily what you need to win a prize here at Electromaker of the Month, because our second prize winner here has made something absolutely amazing. Let's get that out of the way straight away. There's nothing about this that isn't incredible, but what makes it incredible in a way is its simplicity. This uses pieces you'll find in a normal Arduino starter kit, and the rest of it is made entirely out of cardboard, including a reloading mechanism and a trigger mechanism. So this is laser tag. If you've ever gone and played laser tag, you will know that you have light guns that shoot infrared, and there are sensors that pick up that infrared, and that's where you decide if you are shot or not. You have a certain amount of lives, and when those lives are over, it is game over. And as you can see from this video, that is exactly what this does. So if I'm just going to fast forward onto, yeah, this is the demo of it working. So as you saw, that's a fully functional laser tag system with sounds denoting when a shot happens, and then when the lives are out, there's a sound that shows for game over and a button that resets it all. What makes it impressive is that inside there is just bits that you'll find in a regular Arduino starter kit. Lots of jumper wires, an Arduino Uno, 9-volt battery adapter, mini breadboard, infrared sensors, infrared blasters, little 7-segment displays. These are all things that you will find inside your average Arduino starter kit. To turn it into such a fantastic project is incredible. And this is an absolutely deserving second place winner. This is from Mail Studio. As mentioned, this video is in French, but if you want to see the original, which is in English, if you want to see the original write-up, which is in English, you can find that on the Electromaker website just here, which goes through all of it as well, including the electronics and how you can put one of these together yourself. For me, the thing that I find incredible is just the level of skill that goes into making cardboard crafting look this good. I make things out of cardboard for my children quite a lot, and they look all right. Okay, but this looks really incredible, and especially once it's painted up and finished, the finish on it is just absolutely astounding. As you're seeing, these things look like, if they were made out of foam core, these things would look like props. It's incredible. So yes, this is an absolutely fantastic second place winner. You're deserving of the $100 prize and the pile of Electromaker swag that will be making its way to you. In third place this month is an ESP8266 reaction game from Make It For Less. Now, Make It For Less has put out some fantastic things recently. We actually featured their Macrogachi on last week's video, which is their take on an updated version of the Tamagotchi. This is a little bit more of a fun project that is a one and done. It's a riff on a drinking game that I remember from my time at university, which is a very, very simple game. There is one drink on the table that you do not want to drink. Ours usually had some chili sauce component to it. And then something will happen. Someone will say something or click their fingers, and the last person to slap the table has to take the drink. This takes that idea and puts it into a small 3D printed box with arcade-style buttons and a servo to give you the drink if you lose. So in this particular instance, the LED lights up, and if you're the last person to press the arcade button, then the servo arm will pass you the drink. Running the show inside is an ESP8266 development board. I believe it's a VMOS D1 Mini. Yeah, a VMOS D1 Mini is running the show, but everything you need to know about it is in the video itself. The video goes through all you need to know in terms of the build process and exactly how it all works, including the cost and a little OLED screen. And if you would like to get all of the plan files and the code for it, you can head to the project page. All of that is available just here as well. So congratulations, Make It For Less. You are our third place winner of Electromaker of the Month this month. You win $50 in cash and a pile of Electromaker swag as well. So that was the Electromaker of the month for July. And I'm really glad that we get to run this contest. It feels really nice that we are able to celebrate the people that put projects up on our website. And the best thing about it is you don't really need to implicitly enter one competition. Whenever you're working on something that you're ready to share with the world, you can put it up on our project page for free, and it will automatically be entered into the running for that month for you to win cash and a bunch of Electromaker stuff. So if you are working on something, even if it isn't quite finished, but you just are in the process of documenting it and you want to share it with us, please do put it up on the projects page. That means it will be entered into the competition and quite likely talked about on the Electromaker Show. Up next, we have a YouTube series on STM32 bare metal programming. Now, I have to admit that bare metal programming of anything is a bit of a guilty pleasure for me. There's no reason why I'd ever need to do it. However, I do feel like every time I spend just a couple of days with a bare metal project before I abandon it and go back to MicroPython or a CSDK or something that I'm familiar with, I do learn a lot. Now, we talked about something similar to this last year. Mitchell Davis put out an Arduino series, which was basically Blinking Lights the Hardware or something he called it, which started with your average blinking Arduino program and went down and down and down until the point that you were basically working in the command line using AVRDude to flash microcontrollers that way. This is similar, but as I mentioned, for the STM32. Now, the YouTube series is nothing new. However, it's only just been brought to my attention. This is something that I saw on Hackaday a couple of days ago, and Low Byte Productions is the YouTube series from Francis Stokes, and essentially it is a full run-through of how you can get an STM32 chip running. It uses the popular Nucleo board, but there's no reason why you couldn't adapt this to work with a Blue Pill board as well, as long as you have a way to program it. He was using a different programmer. As you can see, this is one that's already had the ST-Link programmer snapped off it. If you have a Nucleo board, you'll probably find that it has the ST-Link programmer still on it, so you can follow this literally just with the board plugged into your USB port. Now, I will link the Hackaday article in the description of this video, as that's where I found this. But in this fantastically written by Brian Cockfield article, if you come down and actually click on the title of the YouTube video, it will take you to the playlist on Low Byte Productions YouTube channel, where you can then subscribe to them and you can see the full extent of what this means. Because the series doesn't just go through how to get started with bare metal programming. A lot of people will do that, but it will mostly end when you get to a place where you can upload code to a board, and that's that. This tells you essentially how to get started. Series 0 is basically a rundown of what the series is going to be, including the hardware that he'll be using. He's using a Nucleo board, but you can use various other boards as well. And then, of course, the obligatory how to blink a light using bare metal coding. Although this isn't completely bare metal at this stage. This is libopencm3 that he uses to begin with. However, the following video immediately jumps deeper and says, so what's going on under there? And then it goes on to PWM and timers, the world's simplest bootloader, UART drivers from scratch, designing a packet protocol, making bootloaders, timer APIs, and just most recently, just a few weeks ago, cryptographically signed firmware. Just 4 days ago, sorry. So this is an ongoing thing. I've watched a lot of bare metal content, I suppose you could call it, some of which is designed just to get you going, and I do understand why people do that. There are people who do need to make single videos that will get lots of clicks, but this is a really fantastic long-form series that tells you everything you need to know at every turn in order to get started, and isn't reliant on you doing things exactly their way, which I think is fantastic. So yes, I will leave a link to the Hackaday article in the description of the video. You can head through. If you do find this particular playlist useful, or you happen to know of another one which is even better than this, do let me know. It is, as I say, a guilty pleasure of mine to do bare metal programming on MCUs every now and again, even though I have zero reason to and even less time. If you are enjoying the Electromaker Show, if you could take a moment to check that you are subscribed to the Electromaker YouTube channel, that would mean a lot. Also, the subscription button, once you are subscribed, turns into a drop-down menu, and if you click all there, that will give you notifications on YouTube alone when we put up a new episode or product of the week. It will show up in the top right of your screen. Now, the other thing that YouTubers always ask for is please smash that like button or whatever people say. I don't really mind seeing how many people like it. It's nice, but when you press like, it also shows YouTube that you like it, and that makes it far more likely that they will recommend it to other people. So those 3 things are free and very quick to do, and if you wouldn't mind doing them, that would be great. However, if you would like to support us in a somewhat more concrete way, we do have a shop. Yes, at www.electromaker.io/shop, you will find everything from the first Arduino starter kit that you might want to buy someone as a gift or a Christmas present, right through to very specific things that you might be looking for your project, or indeed 10,000 of those very specific things that your work might be looking for. If it's not listed on the site, please do get in touch with our sales representatives. And thank you to all of you that are using the Electromaker shop. That is the sole way that this show is funded. We hope to continue doing it that way. It's really nice not to have to rely on YouTube advertisements and all of that kind of stuff. If you've ever seen an advert on one of our YouTube videos, rest assured that money is going to YouTube and not us. Anyway, with all of that said, thank you. Let's get on with the show. It is time for Funding Website Things, the part of the show where we look at things on funding websites, and today we're looking at 2 pre-launch projects on Crowdsupply. Now, Crowdsupply, if you're not familiar with it, is exactly like Kickstarter, but it is just for hardware electronics. And one of the things that sets it aside to things like Kickstarter is that you can have extended pre-launch phases where you say, this is something that we're working out and we're about to launch it. But until we do, we're just going to say, look at how cool this is, but we'll update you when we know how much it's going to cost. And that's essentially what's happening with both of these projects right now. This is a fantastic way to get an idea about what might be coming, and what we do in the Electromaker Show is we will frequently go back and look at things that we featured in the past and see how the funding is going and whether you might want to actually support them once that funding round begins. So we're going to start with Open Smart Kit from the company OSK, presumably named after Open Smart Kit, coming from the Ukraine. And this is an open source, flexible, modular hardware modules with Home Assistant compatibility for any of your automation needs. Now, we've seen lots of all-in-one smart home boxes that can do it all before. What really sets any of these aside is A, how useful would it be? B, how much can you hack it to your own means? And C, how much does it cost? Well, the third one we can't really answer at this stage because we don't know. They haven't started their funding round, and that's how everything works on this website. You do not know until the funding round begins. However, every other part of those questions looks pretty good. So this is a DIN mountable box that you can get various different versions of. It is a base board which has varying different kinds of functionality. We'll get onto that in a moment, which has these cards you can slot into it, all of which house ESP32 modules. So ESP32 based modules, ideal for a variety of automating tasks, including home automation. All OSK modules are enclosed and support DIN rail mounting, as I've just mentioned. And so let's look at the first one here. This is the Relay S1. It has 8 2-contact mechanical relays and 16 I/O. Using those relays, users can control up to 6 amp 250 alternating current or 6 amp 30 direct current, 30 amp direct current. And as you're seeing here, you have the box here, which can be DIN rail mountable, CAN bus in and out, and then I/O on each side here, and a bunch of relays as well. And then there's another version which has solid state relays, and another version that has power MOSFETs. The idea being that you can plug sensors directly into this box. You don't have to use wireless sensors, but of course, if you want to, this is an ESP32, so you've Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, any other way that you want to connect to things. So I think this is the key part of it right here. As it says, Open Smart Kit was created by programmers for programmers. So users can develop custom firmware and easily flash it without limitations. At the same time, if you don't wish to program it, you can set it up by using friendly plug-and-play software like ESP Home or Home Assistant. And I feel like that's one of the key things here. I think there's a lot of people out there who would love the idea of completely rolling their own, making completely homemade hardware and putting completely homemade software on it. But at the end of the day, having bug-free and durable hardware is something that you usually end up spending a lot of money on, and when you spend that money on it, you're usually then tied into their system. It's not open anymore. You have to use their cloud. This is not that. This is something that you can completely isolate on your network, only have one portal to your network or no portal to the outside internet at all if you wanted to, which I think is quite an interesting idea. And also the software side of it, just the fact that you can plumb Home Assistant into this thing and you can have this thing and have it up and running, working straight away with the idea of changing the firmware in a way that you like later. As it says, this is something that is clearly stackable. You'll be able to put these things next to each other. I imagine it would be, if you have DIN rails, it would be quite easy to run several of these and just run power along to all of them. But at this stage, that's all there is to say about it. I'll leave a link to it in the description of the video. As always, if you want to, you can put your email address in this box right here and click subscribe. And what you're subscribing to there is just updates from the OSK team about this particular product. You'll only hear about this. So if you come to Crowdsupply and you put your email address on just one page, that's the only product you're going to hear about. And we'll come back to this one when we know how much it's going to cost and when they're going to be putting it live. If you would like to know the full details of it all, of course, you can head down to here. But yes, I just feel like something that has a very modular idea that can work with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, serial, and CAN is a very interesting thing. Something that I think a lot of DIY smart home enthusiasts will be very happy to see is coming. Now up next we're going to be talking about the Inkplate Plus Squared. Now we talked about a lot of Inkplate products over the years on this show, and if Inkplate just continued putting out different sized e-paper displays that were more or less the same, there may come a point where I'd stop speaking about them. But this is not that. This is an incredibly innovative idea, because you may not be aware of this, but one of the things that really sets the earlier Inkplates aside is that they found that they could get a huge amount of refurbished but not used Amazon Kindle displays and thought, what could we do with these? And they used that as their basis to work a product together, basically. So how could we drive this e-paper display? All right, we'll make a custom driver. How can we get the user to use this display? All right, we need an MCU. Well, let's just go straight for an ESP32. Everyone loves those. So now we have a Wi-Fi enabled display. What else can we add to it? And that's what's happened over the years. There's various different kinds of them with things like real-time clocks on them, with user capacitive touch buttons on the front. This is exactly that. They found that there was these custom e-paper touch screens that were required that were made for a project that was no longer going ahead. They acquired them and they designed the Inkplate Plus Squared around it. And for that reason alone, this is going to be a limited thing when it is released. Now, this is a pre-launch page, no idea about how much it's going to cost quite yet. But as it said, there's only going to be around 400 pieces. The limited availability thing I just mentioned was here, by the way. There's only going to be around 400 of them made. They don't know for that for sure quite yet. But this thing is kind of amazing looking. It's somewhere between like the Thingy things from Nordic Semiconductor. Funnily enough, we'll be talking about the Thingy 53 later on this show, and what company makes the M5 Atom boards that have either the matrix LED in them or the screen in them. It sort of looks like between those two things. But as far as I know, there's no one making small custom e-paper displays like this with a touchscreen and a bunch of different ways of working with them. Now, the all-important specs. Once again, we have an ESP32 system on chip, which is what's going to be running the show. And there is also the ability to attach a real-time clock. I don't know if it comes with a real-time clock. No, it comes with a real-time clock. I apologize. A micro SD card reader where they can pull images for display. Although, of course, you could also draw your own custom buttons on the touchscreen is what I'm thinking people might end up using this for. It also comes with a LiPo battery, or Lylon battery, ready to use with an onboard charging circuit. Interestingly, it also comes with environmental and air quality sensors, and it also comes with sensors for proximity and gesture detection, thanks to the APDS 9960 Broadcom chip, something I'm not so familiar with. That's something that we can maybe come back to on a later show. I'm really interested in finding out what people are using for those, because everyone switched to these Bosch environmental sensors overnight, and I'm very interested to see if there's a reason that these things keep showing up, because I recognize the product number, know nothing about the product. Always find that interesting. Anyway, as I said, this is just a lovely little square. It would just be a lovely little square development kit for the ESP32 alone, even if you don't put the touch e-ink display in there too. So touch e-ink display is going to be fantastic for power consumption. You can use low power on the ESP32, and as the previous ones of these have shown, some of the projects have used ultra low power on them before. I don't know how it'll work in this particular setup. It's just a really interesting idea, and I love the fact that Soldered keep coming back to and doing things like this, because the first Inkplate was just an idea out of necessity. What are we going to do with all of these e-ink displays now that we've bought them thinking we'd make something out of them? Well, they made one of the earliest user-friendly e-ink displays, and lots of companies have done them since then, but Soldered have been doing this for a long time and have always delivered on everything that they've put out. So, as I said before, if Soldered were doing the same thing over and over again, I wouldn't necessarily cover it. But in a weird way, because of the way that they do things, they're always going to be doing interesting stuff. For as long as displays hit the market that end up not being used for products, they're going to find an interesting way of putting it into our hands rather than them ending up in some closed source junk that'll get thrown away in a few months' time. I really like that idea, and I hope that you will too. It is time for the Electromaker product of the week, and this time they have focused on the Nordic Semiconductor Thingy 53, which I'm very glad about, because it's something that I have talked about and fiddled with for a very long time, pretty much since it was released. Nordic sent me one on release, which of course I gave away shortly after getting it, but yeah, I've been amazed by this little Bluetooth kit, how easy it is to get up and running with it, and I've seen it do some kind of amazing things. So at its core, it is an NRF53840 chip, which was Nordic's flagship BLE chip. It sort of still is. The NRF54 is out, but it's not out in the same way as the older flagships are. But yeah, the Nordic 53 puts the NRF53840 into a really nice square container with a battery and a battery charger and a bunch of sensors. It makes it very easy to get started with it. Not only that, when we were at Embedded World last year, Robin from Nordic showed me in real time how easy it is to gather sound data on the Thingy 53, then send it to Edge Impulse via a mobile phone, and then get a trained model back onto it. And it took almost no time at all. In fact, the only slowdowns that happened weren't down to the hardware itself. It's down to the fact that when you get a huge amount of people in a small space like that, there's trouble with signal was the main issue. There was something like when they were talking about the Wi-Fi stuff, they were talking about something like 150,000 different access points in that one room alone. Yeah, conferences are a different kind of crazy. Anyway, back to the point. The Nordic Thingy 53 is our product of the week, and as always, there is a fantastic video from Robin Mitchell, our gadget guru, who talks about it in a lot more detail than I'm going to be able to. As I've mentioned many times in the past, Robin is actually an engineer, so when he talks about every aspect of something, he understands every aspect of it, whereas I understand most of it, and then it gets to a point where it goes straight over my head, and it's things that I'm looking forward to messing with when I have spare time. If I ever get a retirement, maybe I'll finally understand some of these things. Now, the Nordic Thingy 53, as I've mentioned, is a little square development kit. This is just the PCB side of it. But if you look, you have a lot of things built into there. RGB LED for feedback and a color sensor for sensing colors going into the board as well. 2.4 gigahertz antenna for various forms of radio communication. A digital microphone, RF port for direct RF measurements, and then an NRF 21540, which is a coprocessor. And I can't remember exactly what that one does. I'll have to look that one up. User programmable buttons, and then the SoC, and then an external memory chip as well. On the other side, there is a buzzer, an NFC antenna connector, so you can use NFC with this, an accelerometer and a gyroscope, a humidity, a temperature and pressure and gas sensor, and a low power accelerometer. I find this one really interesting. If you want to run in a super low power mode, they have a separate part which is specifically for low power accelerometer, which isn't as capable as another accelerometer, but sometimes it doesn't need to be. Sometimes you need something to run for a very long time and just report and wake up and report when it gets moved, and this is exactly what that is for. And then NPM 1100 power management chip, and a battery connector as well, and a USB-C connector for programming, all of that kind of good stuff. Oh, it's a range extender. The 21540 is a plug-and-play range extender offering... yes, I did know about this. Okay, anyway, I got slightly distracted. It bugged me that I couldn't remember what the NRF 21540 is. And it is a range extender, and that makes absolute sense because I've seen projects with the Nordic Thingy 53 that use long-range Bluetooth. So yes, anyway. So, as always, if you'd like to see a slightly more thorough run-through than I'm going to give, you can watch Robin's video. I will leave a link to the Product of the Week article in the description of the video. You can also, of course, read through it and look at Nordic's Developer Academy around it as well. But as always with all of these things, once again, I have given away one Nordic Thingy 53, and now the Product of the Week team are about to give away another. And if you would like to win a Nordic Thingy 53 development board, well, it couldn't be simpler. So, for a chance to win this, all you need to do is make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel. All of our competitions are open to all subscribers of the Electromaker YouTube channel. The second thing you need to do is say what you would do if you won this. There are many fantastic project ideas out there, but I'd like to know what you would do. What does this board inspire you to make? And the third thing you need to do is leave the hashtag Thingy53, no spaces, no punctuation, just Thingy53. And that just means that we can find all of the entries and log them and make sure that people aren't entering duplicate times, all of that kind of stuff. And we will be announcing the winner to that on the next Electromaker Show, which will be in 2 weeks' time, just to let you know at this stage. I don't know if I mentioned it at the start of the show. I'm running an ultramarathon this weekend. I don't want to do a show with painful legs and brain. So in 2 weeks' time, we will be announcing the winner of the Thingy 53 competition, and this is all you need to do in order to enter it. Good luck. We'll be announcing the winner then. Now, there are few things I love more than very simple ideas that make working with embedded hardware a lot easier, especially when those ideas are incredibly cheap as well. And a Swedish company, Solder Party, has done this and more. Now, if you're familiar with the name Solder Party, it's because I also talked about them a long while ago on the show. They were the ones that put out the RP2040 stamp not long after the RP20 hardware was released. A perfectly square and very, very tiny, if you know how big the RP2040 chips are, development board which has both holes and castellated edges, which should give you a little clue as to what we're about to talk about next, because these are the flexi pins. Now, if you look at them just alone, it was probably already given away by what was on the page beforehand. If you look at them just alone, you're probably going to have a rough idea in your head as to how these things could help and work in a project, because they look like little flexible metal pins. And that's exactly what they are. If I show you this image here, you'll get a much stronger idea as to exactly what's going on. This is a way of attaching any module, or in fact anything with castellated edges, to a much larger breakout module. In the case of things like ESP32 boards, or whichever one is here, I can't tell from this angle, article. This is just putting it onto a slightly larger breadboard-friendly footprint. But if we go back to the actual first page here, you will see that Solder Party have put out a bunch of these. Most recently, the Raspberry Pi Pico to Arduino form factor board, which is amazing because this means that any 3.3 volt tolerant Arduino shields that you have out there, you can use with the Raspberry Pi Pico, and you don't have to solder the castellated edges. You see, these pins are, the one side of the pins are soldered into here, but then you can just push the Raspberry Pi down onto it, and the pins will be pushed out and hold onto the castellated edges, allowing you to use it without having to actually solder the board down. There's another board similar to this that we talked about a while ago, which either works with the Pico, or I think it must be the Pico, or maybe it's one of the ESP32 variants, I don't know, but it gives it an Arduino footprint. However, that requires you to solder it down. This does not. Now, unsurprisingly, there are versions of this that work with various ESP32 modules as well. As you're seeing, there's one here which breaks this out into something that's a little bit easier to put pins into. Again, this allows you to just work with a bare ESP32C3 module, but on a breadboard. In fact, most of these do exactly that, but there are some slightly inventive ones as well. I showed you the Arduino one. I thought this was really nice as well. Notoriously, the Raspberry Pi Pico does not play nice with breadboards. However, this tiny board allows you to put it onto a breadboard, breaks out all of the pins of the Raspberry Pi Pico, and allows you to hot swap the Picos because these are flexi pins and it is not soldered down. By the way, have you been noticing the prices of these things? Obviously, this doesn't come with a Raspberry Pi Pico, but this little board is €1.82. The Arduino Flexi adapter is €1.37. All of these ESP32 ones are around $1. It's just incredible. $1, €1. I guess it would be around $1. I'm not really up on conversion rates. I just thought it was such a lovely idea. I can't, for the life of me, remember where I saw this. This was reported on somewhere this week, and I haven't been able to find it. So I apologize if you are a tech journalist who wrote an article about this week that I read when I was in between jobs, and I could just remember the name FlexiPins and then found it this way. But yes, if you are interested in putting something with castellated edges onto a board but don't want to do it in a permanent way, you can do this. In fact, one extra thing, Solder Party have a YouTube page. So I can't find my original link, but I just typed Solder Party YouTube into Google, clicked on the first link, Arturo182, who is from Solder Party, and the first video is the FlexiPin soldering guide. Now, this is a guide for how to solder the FlexiPins, which in and of itself is very nice, very useful. You get to see him doing it in real time, inspecting it, and then attaching a ESP32 module to it. But the thing about it that I thought was really interesting is in the description just down here, the Unexpected Maker pops up, someone who we talked about on the show quite a lot, and said, I might have bought a few of these. Do you have a footprint available? Because Unexpected Maker created their own footprint for using the FlexiPins with. And this is something that they reply by saying, hey, look, on github.com/solderparty, we have a FlexiPin repository, and it has a script in which will actually give you KiCad footprints for anything. All you need to do, you can generate footprints with a custom number of pins and pitch using the generate footprints Pi script and run it with help to find out how. So they've got their own software to actually create FlexiPin holes for pretty much any board if you give them the distance between the castellated pins. Sorry, I'm struggling to speak ever so slightly. You might be hearing it in my throat. I have a slightly sore throat, and that always throws me off slightly when my voice does not sound the way that I'm used to it sounding. Anyway, I'm spending a very long amount of time on something that is essentially very simple, but that's the point. This is an incredibly simple idea, and I really like the idea of it. And if you are interested in finding out more, I will leave a link to the Solder Party shop in the description of the video. From there, you can get a link through to their GitHub and find this tool if you will find it useful for them. And as mentioned, Solder Party's YouTube channel is Arturo182 if you'd like to see this soldering video. Now, just last week we talked about Orange Pi because of the release of the Pi 03, and as I talked about on that show, confusingly that board is not a Raspberry Pi 0 form factor. It's actually a 5x5 centimeter Linux SBC with a full-sized Ethernet port and a bunch of nice things on it, and it's very cheap. But Orange Pi historically are known of being the sort of Raspberry Pi clones. And if you look at what they've put out, it does look a lot like that. I mean, the Orange Pi 800 or whatever it was called was a computer in a keyboard that looked almost exactly like the Raspberry Pi 400. They just doubled the number. And most Orange Pi boards are meant to ape or directly replace Raspberry Pis. And that has always come at a bit of a price because they've tried to undercut them on price, but they've never had the same level of support in terms of software, and different versions of different software for the Orange Pi has always been a little bit different as well. However, the Orange Pi 3B is a quite interesting one for a number of reasons. So let's leave aside Raspberry Pi shortage issues for just a moment, and let's just look at the raw specs of what's going on here. This is an RK3566 single-board computer, which means that the system on chip is already more powerful than a Raspberry Pi 3B, and that's what this is meant to compare up against. And it has a lot of things that the Raspberry Pi 3B doesn't have as well, including an M2 M-keyed slot, M.2 M-key slot, and eMMC modules that can be attached to the bottom of the board in varying sizes, everything from, I believe, 16 gigabytes up to 256, yeah. And if you look at the board here, this is where you're finding these things. The M2 slot is on the bottom here in the eMMC interface. And as already mentioned, it already has more power in the chip. So this is already starting to stack up to look quite nice, but how much does it cost? Well, that's an interesting one. There's so many versions of this. As you can see here, it starts at $34.99 with 2 gigabytes of RAM, but no eMMC. But for $50 for 2 gigabytes of RAM and a 256 gigabyte eMMC flash module, you're beginning to get into incredibly good value territory. I'd even argue that the 67 gigabyte version, which has 8 gigabytes of RAM with 256 gigabytes eMMC flash storage, is at this particular moment in time one of the best value single board computers that you could maybe buy. So why am I saying all of this like there's going to be a big but? Well, the but isn't that big. Raspberry Pi and Raspberry Pi OS is constantly worked on in a way that makes it very transparent for most people. If you are a casual user, and I consider myself very much a casual user, the good thing about Raspberry Pi is that not only is everything very well documented and looked into, if there is a problem with something, it's most likely written about as part of the Raspberry Pi community in the forum posts on Twitter or whatever, and easily searchable because so many people use it. With Orange Pi, they put out so many different operating systems with each release that you're kind of having this issue of spreading it out across everything. So this is going to have Android 11, Ubuntu 22.04, 20.04, Debian 11, Debian 12, OpenHarmony 4 Beta 1, Orange Pi OS, which is their own Orange Pi operating system, and both versions of it. And as CNX say quite here, it's unlikely all those images get the same level of support, so users will have to find out which one works best for them. And the other side, the point I was going to make, is that when you have so many different options for a board, yes, everything runs on the Raspberry Pi, okay, but for what is the mainline operating system for this? Because I don't think it's Orange OS, not yet. Anyway, went off on a bit of a rant there, but the point is, if you do want one of these, they are actually already available to pre-order on Amazon. There's a link in the CNX software article, which I will leave in the description of the video. AliExpress. I thought there was an Amazon. Yes, there we go. Pre-order on Amazon, also available on AliExpress. I think maybe that has been changed since I saw this original article, actually. I don't think it was available on AliExpress. It is not. Oh, there you go. That's what happens when I look at things in real time. It looks like the Orange Pi 3B is not available on the AliExpress store quite yet. However, you can pre-order it on Amazon. And as I previously mentioned, I feel like this setup here, $67.99 for a pretty powerful, the RK3566 is a pretty powerful chip in and of itself. It's not the most powerful one showing up in SBCs right now, but those SBCs tend to cost $100 more than this. If you get this running with a stable version of Linux, and you're happy to maybe run into any of the issues that could provide, which aren't necessarily many if you're using this as a server with some basic GPIO in and out, don't see there being any particular issue. That's one thing that Orange Pi are very good at. Their libraries for working with the GPIOs and stuff like that tend to be fairly complete. This is very, very good value indeed. That was the podcast for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for all the support that you continue to show us. And let me know anything in the show that you found particularly interesting, or not, as that may be. Or if I ever do an absolute clanger and miss the biggest bit of embedded news somehow any one week, and you would like me to cover it on a following show, do tell me. However, speaking of following shows, there will not be a show next week. This weekend, as I mentioned at the start of the show, is the ultra marathon that I am running. It is 100 miles around the entire Berlin Wall. Yes, I am slightly mad. And if you would like to support the charity that I am fundraising for, which is Mind UK, that helps people with mental health issues, you can find a link to that in the description of this podcast. However, I will be, is it called the show notes? It's the show notes of this podcast. Either way, the place where there's writing about this podcast. With that in mind, I'm taking a week off the show next week while my legs and head recover. So I will see you again in around about 2 weeks' time. Take care. I hope you have a fun one. Bye-bye.